Us, Mukesh, we've had several conversations on this matter in anticipation of what the government is likely to do. The speculation hopefully will be over in the next 15 minutes or so when the finance minister is likely to address the press and make it official on the AP Shah panel's recommendations being accepted. What do you make of it, and how do you see this turning sentiment?
Well, I think it's a welcome news. I don't know whether it's going to help turn sentiments, but certainly it's temporarily going to help soothe the sentiments. Now, what's likely to happen is that we need to wait and see whether government will issue a clarificatory circular at this point in time, because that's what is required, because some assessments are getting time barred for the following years. Will it follow up with an amendment to the Income Tax Act, and that amendment can either occur in the 2016 budget, or they can move another amendment in this year's budget. And the third important aspect is to wait and see how does the Supreme Court react to this if the matter comes up on board on the 29th of September. So I think these are the three developments. But having said that, I think it is certainly a welcome news in these difficult times.
So Mukesh, consensus on the panel, and I've got Sandeep Parikh, Dinesh Kanabar, Nishit Desai with me here on the show, and the consensus seems to be that the need of the hour will essentially be a clarificatory circular from the CBDT. You're saying that in addition to that, they will need to move an amendment to the Income Tax Act as well?
Well, CBDT circular, as everyone on the panel will agree, is binding merely on the officers. Given the importance of this matter and the fact that this is before the final court of law in India, an amendment to the Act would certainly be helpful. So if you sit and debate this issue with legal counsels, with these FIIs, they would certainly expect an amendment to the statute rather than merely the CBDT circular.
Absolutely, that would just make it or give it much more weight and authority. Mukesh, just hang in there. I've also got Pranay Saitha joining us. Mr. Saitha, appreciate you joining us. Your first thoughts? We are waiting for the finance minister in about 12 minutes from now. I understand he is going to go public with the government's decision to accept the AP Shah panel's recommendations. But your thoughts? Are you expecting now the next course of action to be a clarificatory circular issued by the CBDT, followed by an amendment to the Income Tax Act?
All right. So I do expect a CBDT circular clarifying that in the government's view and after due consideration, MAT should not apply to foreign companies not having a permanent establishment in India. And that circular would be directing their officers, all subordinate authorities, to act accordingly, which I think would be a great positive. I also think that simultaneously they would take a stand that when the matter comes up before the Supreme Court on 29th of September, in the Castleton matter, they will give appropriate instructions to their counsel, and in turn, therefore, for all practical purposes, concede before the Supreme Court that they, so to say, agree with the position that the taxpayers are taking, that where they do not have a permanent establishment, the foreign company should not be subject to MAT. I think for all practical purposes, these two should be extremely positive and should be adequate for the time being. Amendment to the law would always be great to have, but I'm not too sure that right now, in the midst of all that's going on, they are going to find it very easy to focus on amending the law immediately. But I think these two things should be good enough for the present, for practical purposes.
Sure. We are still awaiting the details, but let me get Mukesh's point of view in on this as well. Mukesh, the panel has also been debating whether or not we are actually going to see the exemption being provided to foreign companies that don't have a permanent establishment in India. There is still no clarity on whether that is going to happen or not. What is your own sense? And if it falls short of that, how much of a disappointment will it be?
Well, I think the whole debate arose in the Castleton case because of levy of MAT on foreign companies and not levy of MAT on FIIs. Because all the tax authorities did was took the Castleton principle and implanted it on FIIs. Now, ideally, the panel should have dealt comprehensively with the levy of MAT on all forms of foreign companies, not necessarily FIIs. I don't know whether they have dealt with it or not. If they stick strictly to the terms of reference that were given, then I think they would not deal with the larger issue of levy of MAT on FIIs, because the larger legal principles that there is no case for levy of MAT continues, and I think possibly in the minds of the government they would be wanting to deal with it, in a part of the next budget, because if you look at the amendment that was brought about in the 2015 budget that dealt only with FIIs and did not deal with the comprehensive issue of levy of MAT on all forms of foreign companies.
Mr. Saitha, how would you respond to the concern that's been brought to the table by Mukesh Butani? And even the last time that we actually heard from Justice AP Shah on this channel when the report was submitted to the government, there were questions about the terms of reference and whether the panel or the Shah panel had stuck to the narrow terms of reference or not. Would you be disappointed if we don't actually see foreign companies being exempt as well?
Yeah, that would be extremely disappointing, and I do not I do not think there's a high probability of that happening. I think the government does realize that the rationale, logic, reasoning, which supports the proposition that FIIs would not be subject to MAT in India, equally supports and is likely to support the proposition that any other foreign company not having a permanent establishment should equally then not be subject to MAT in India. So I think what applies to the goose applies to the gander. In that sense, I think the logic rationale being the same, I would feel certainly that the government would do the same or give the same treatment to foreign companies other than FIIs not having a permanent establishment.
We hope so, Mr. Saitha, but very often what is logical is often ignored by government, especially when it comes to tax-related matters. So let's hope that logic does in fact carry through as far as this particular circular is concerned. But in terms of fine print, and I'll put that question to both you and Mukesh, in terms of fine print, what is it that you would be hoping for that will finally put this devil to rest? Let me start with you, Mr. Saitha.
So I would feel very clearly the circular should bring out that the provision of law is in a certain manner, that the provision was never intended to apply to foreign companies not having permanent establishment, as is clearly brought out by the reasoning, and we've discussed that reasoning many times over. Hopefully the Justice AP Shah committee report also brings that reasoning out, and that therefore accordingly the government has decided that MAT should not be applied and all officers should adhere to that in their functioning and close matters accordingly and bring finality accordingly. And similar instructions being given, as I said, to the counsel who appears for the Castleton matter before the Supreme Court. A clear circular and that clear instruction to the counsel, I think, should put this matter for all practical purposes to rest, especially given the already existing strong rationale and reasoning in support of such a proposition. So they are not doing anything unusual, out of the way or outrageous. In fact, they are only doing something which in any case is strongly supported by logic and reasoning. And such a clearly brought out articulated
clear circular is what you're saying is the need of the hour. Mr. Saitha, Mukesh, Nishit and Sandeep, just hang in there. Let me bring in a voice in from the markets as well, because the markets have been very, very volatile. In fact, another sell-off that we saw today. Perhaps this could change sentiment a tad. Let's go across to Sanjay Dutt of Quantum Security. Sanjay, you were speaking with us this afternoon as we saw the market selling off. Of course, reacting to what's happening globally. And of course, the global picture continues to look fairly weak at this point in time. But on the back of this announcement, if it is as what we are picking up from our sources, that the AP Shah recommendations have been accepted as far as exempting FIIs and perhaps even foreign companies from the levy of MAT prior to April 1, 2015, how significant a boost will it be for our markets?
I think it's very important because what I gather from a large number of institutional investors, they didn't have this sword hanging on their head and the uncertainty related to this. More than that, I'm happy about the fact that it does kind of send a very clear message on this whole retrospective issue that government has been grappling with for the last many years, and all of us investors and even, in fact, businessmen have had issues with regard to, retrospective taxation, and there'll be no clarity on a lot of issues. So that's, I think, a very important issue that has been put to rest, that, when they've specified the date as being April 1st, 2015. So it was definitely a sentiment booster, and it will impact some of the FIIs, particularly the ones who've been under litigation and the ones who were fearing issues arising out of the litigation. So I think it would...
but will this be enough, Sanjay, to turn the mood positive? Because FIIs have been selling at this point in time. DIIs have been coming to the rescue of our markets. But do you really see this being enough to turn sentiment back towards India at this point in time? And of course, FII is not necessarily selling out only because of local factors, but also what's happening across the globe. But do you believe that this will give them enough to reconsider?
No, I don't think so. I don't think this will really be a deciding factor in favor of turning the sentiment or you seeing $1 billion outflows coming in because of this. But I think it's a very important positive message. So if the sentiment was normal and not weighed down by the international developments, this would have been a major kicker. But it's one more kind of checkbox that's positive for India, and India is open for business as what the government has been trying to convey to everyone across the world. So I think that from that point of view it's positive, but for the sentiment to change only because of this towards India as far as the FIIs are concerned, I don't think so. I think there are a lot of other factors that are playing out, whether it's the emerging market trade or whether it's the risk-off trade because of, various other issues.
Well, that's right. Mukesh, just to take that point forward that Mr. Saitha was talking about to really get finality as far as this matter is concerned and whether or not the government is actually going to withdraw from the Castleton matter in the Supreme Court, the likelihood of that, if they do, as we are picking up, accept the Shah panel's recommendations?
Shouldn't we look at the reverse as well? If the government does not come out with a very clear and categorical circular in favor of not applying MAT to foreign companies, in the already depressed environment, what would be the impact? Would it not just be another bloodbath?
Okay, Sanjay, you've got a question there from Pranay Saitha of Ernst & Young saying that if the government's clarification is not clear and doesn't apply to foreign companies that don't have a permanent establishment in India, will it not actually lead to further downside in the market?
No, my bets are the other way around because, knowing Jayant Sinha and knowing the finance minister, and particularly Jayant Sinha, who understands this whole game better than any of us do because he's been long enough as a market participant and has looked at things from offshore. I have my doubts if that's going to happen, but if it does, he's correctly said that we would be ready for a bloodbath to make things worse. But I won't bet on that. I think the government is quite cognizant of the fact that they need to come out with clear, circulars, guidelines, and other enactments now. So they are definitely going to tread water on these issues. So I don't think really,
Okay, you're anticipating that they will cross. They'll cross all the T's this time around, Sanjay. But Mukesh Butani, that question that I was asking you, and you can see images there of the finance minister in about 4 minutes from now, will be addressing the media. So, gentlemen, I would request you all to stay on with us here on CNBC TV18 and get the news break from the horse's mouth. In about 4 minutes, the finance minister is going to be speaking, and we would like to get your reactions after he finishes speaking. But, Mukesh, on the Castleton matter now, do you believe that the government will close that issue as well and withdraw in the Supreme Court?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the debate here is whether he's addressing the MAT issue on FII or on the larger debate on foreign companies. I echo the views Pranav shared earlier that this whole controversy of levy of MAT on foreign companies itself is questionable. And I think the government should bury this. I think better sense will prevail on the government to clarify this whole debate, that there is no question of levy of MAT on FII. That's something that we need to wait and see. But I think the larger message that is coming out of this debate is that there is a government that's willing to listen. It's willing to change course or correct course if it sees that there is any mistake or any error that has been committed by the officers who are administering the law. I think that's the larger message that will go to the FII. And I think the debate here is not just about levy of MAT on FII. The debate is also about the certainty and consistency of the policy. So I think the institutional investors would look at this as a positive signal and say that, yes, here is a government that's willing to mend the ways and change as sentiments to address the sentiments.
Let me get the panel's view on the comment that Mukesh Butani just made. And Sanjay, let me start by asking you, because over the past few weeks, there have been question marks on whether this government is fast losing the political appetite to push through tough reforms, the way that they've capitulated as far as the land acquisition bill is concerned. Will this, in a sense, at least be a shot in the arm to suggest that all is not lost as far as the reform agenda is concerned?
Yeah, I have a different take on that because, we read a lot of negative publicity and we do, all of us analysts, of course, love, bashing the government and bashing the bureaucrats of the issues. But I know one thing for sure, that what Mukesh correctly said, that this government is receptive, is open, is willing to listen to, the problems of the industry. We've seen this happening not just with MAT and taxation. We saw this happening for the steel industry. We've seen they are now taking issues head on with regard to power and NPA. We've seen it with banking. So, whatever we may say that reforms are not there or slow or whatever, each one of us are not happy about the pace or the quantum of reforms. But at least I can say confidently from whatever I interact with people in Delhi, things are happening. A lot of things are happening in stealth mode, may not be happening with loud announcements or, a lot of song and dance and drums about it. Things are actually, government is receptive, government is open, government is in charge and is doing things. Of course, we are a democracy, we've got a system, we've got parliament, we have, periods of uncertainty, periods of problems. But there's no doubt about this, that after 5-8 years, we have a regime that's now open to things, believes in doing action, believes in doing more action than actually talking about it. Of course, a lot of us may disagree with the pace, but that's the problem that we have with the system. We have to live with for a short while till the whole system starts to change.
Well, a quick take from you on how the U.S. markets are doing at this point in time, Sanjay. I'm seeing what the Dow is now down by over 300 points. The Nasdaq has lost over 70 points, and the S&P 500 has lost about 40-odd points at the start of trade. A quick comment from you on what that means now for our markets when we open for trade tomorrow.
I think too early to gauge, but my short take on what's happening in the West right now is that people are kind of adjusting to a lot of complex issues that are playing out in the global risk equation right now. Whether it's coming out of emerging market currencies, China, the U.S. Fed acting now or not acting, how central bankers met in, just a week, 10 days back. So the market participants are adjusting to that. And I think once people are able to, put their arms across all the issues, sanity and stability will return. Same thing I think is going to happen in the West, as will happen here in India. At least one thing that's very good, both U.S., India, and a lot of other economies have reasonably good growth that's now coming in compared to the size of the economy and what they grow at. Yes, the uncertainties will play it out. Market participants are adjusting to it, and I think things will be normal in a few months' time or a few weeks' time probably.
Okay. So we're seeing images there of the finance ministry ready now for the finance minister to address the media. I think it's going to be a couple of minutes before he does address the media and put to rest the speculation as far as the AP Shah panel on MAT is concerned. So let me get comments from each of our panelists who've been patiently waiting by with us for the finance minister to speak. And Sandeep, let me start by asking you the two things that you're going to be watching out for when the finance minister starts to address the media.
Sorry, Shireen, your voice is breaking. Could you please repeat yourself?
I said the two things that you're going to be watching out for as the finance minister starts to address the media, Sandeep.
Yes, so two things would be: one, is it clarificatory? And the second thing obviously would be whether it will apply to all foreign investors or it will be selective in terms of corporate and non-corporate.
Mr. Desai, what would you be watching out for?
Most likely the same thing. Only thing is that, government today has an ability to even expand the scope of benefit. The circular allows the government to, give whatever clarification they want to give, even if it goes outside a little bit of section. but still that's possible. So I think it gives a lot of flexibility. So let's look at what comes up,
Yes, we are waiting to see what finally comes up. Mr. Saitha, do you believe that they are going to be able to exercise the kind of flexibility that Nishit Desai was talking about?
I think the circular will be loud and clear. I think for once this hope is going to come true. I know it's only a hope right now, and the government will very clearly say that foreign companies not having a permanent establishment are not subject to MAT even for past years, and give the full reasoning for it very clearly, which will be a signal of where this government goes when it comes to doing the right thing.
Mukesh?
Well, I think everybody just summarized what we're expecting, nothing more than that. But I think I'd look out for two things. One is I'd look out for a clue that based on what the finance minister says, how the law officer is going to be guided insofar as the matter with the Supreme Court is concerned. And two, what kind of instructions are going to follow to the departmental officers, because it was not just a question of levy of MAT for that particular year, but I imagine that there are other cases that are open as well. So I think how will the departmental officers now react on those matters? So I think those are the two aspects I'll be waiting for.
Okay, so gentlemen, we've been discussing the best case scenario so far, which is that they pretty much bring in foreign companies into the exemption list as well. But what would be the worst case scenario? And again, I'm pointing out for the benefit of our panel, you're obviously not watching your TV screens at this point in time because you're on the phone here with us here on CNBC TV18. But the Finance Ministry in full preparedness. I think in just a minute or so we're getting visuals of the Finance Minister who is going to be walking in to address the media. But what could be the disappointing or the worst case scenario? Mukesh, let me start by asking you. And there you have it, the officials of the Finance Ministry walking in. So I'm guessing that it's about a minute or so that we're away from the Finance Minister's comments. But yeah, Mukesh, go ahead.
Well, it could be speculative to say anything. What could be the worst scenario? I'm just staying positive.
We're still speculating because they haven't made it official yet, Mukesh.
Correct. And at the end of the day, we need to realize that recommendations of expert panels are not binding on the government. So the government in its own prerogative may act. But I think better sense and wisdom will prevail, and I think I'm expecting that this entire controversy will...
Gentlemen, hang in there. Mukesh Butani, Nishit Desai, Sandeep Parikh, Pranay Saitha, Sanjay Dutt, the Finance Minister is addressing the media. I would request all of you to stay on with us here on CNBC TV18 to listen into what the Finance Minister has had to say and then give us your comments. The Finance Minister, Arun Jaitley, starting to speak now.
The Justice AP Shah panel had submitted its report to the government some weeks ago. If you recollect that the Justice AP Shah panel had been constituted by the government in the wake of an issue that had arisen with regard to the levy of MAT on FIIs prior to the 1st of April 2015. For period subsequent to the 1st of April 2015, the finance bill itself had incorporated an amendment that which was clarificatory in nature, that it would not be levied. Now, for the earlier period, we had thought that at one stage that the issue could be resolved by the courts, since there appeared to be prima facie some conflicting opinions of the tribunals. Thereafter, since that was a time-consuming process, the government parallelly entered into an exercise by putting up an expert panel to go into the issue. The expert panel had submitted its report to the government some weeks ago. In the Department of Revenue and the CBDT, this report was considered at length. And there were some issues concerned with the line of reasoning in the report which had arisen. Now, instead of allowing the matter to drag on and ask the committee in writing on those clarifications, we followed an expeditious procedure wherein a meeting was held where I was present along with the Revenue Secretary, the CBDT chairperson and the members were there, and all three members of the committee were. Justice Shah panel were also there. So we discussed that line of reasoning, and certain questions which were in the minds of the CBDT and the Department of Revenue were put before the committee. The committee took note of them and then decided to incorporate a response to them and submitted its revised draft, which is the final draft, on the 25th of August. In the last 1 week, that has been processed. And today I have accepted, on the recommendation of the CBDT and the Department of Revenue, the report of the Justice AP Shah panel dated 25th August. This report would also be made public very soon. A press release is being issued right now. Broadly, the report says that from the time of its statutory incorporation, the intention appeared to be, from the structure of the law, that the minimum alternative tax was not leviable on FIIs. The reasoning given in the 2012 order of the Advanced Ruling Authority, however, gave a contrary view. That matter is pending in the Supreme Court. How the court deals with it will be a separate issue, which I am not going into for that purpose today. And therefore, it would be necessary to make necessary changes to that effect. Now, there are two courses open. One is by issuing a clarificatory circular under the Income Tax Act. We considered that option, but we thought that may have certain grey areas. Because if post 1st April 2015 there is a law which clarifies that it is not applicable, and there is no such law prior to that period, then can the circular itself do the requisite, serve the requisite purpose? So we were of the considered opinion that the alternative course suggested by the Justice Shah panel, which is the preferred course even according to them, that a necessary amendment in the provisions of section 115JB of the Income Tax Act would be required. And we would be bringing out that amendment in the statute. Meanwhile, pending such an amendment, all the field formations will be conveyed by way of a circular that this is the decision of the government, so they'll have to hold their hands and not make pass any further orders in these matters till such time, hopefully in the winter session of Parliament, or whenever there is the next session of Parliament, we'll be able to bring out such an amendment expeditiously.
So
Thank you.
What will happen to 600 crore demand based already?
Well, all those demands will now be interpreted in accordance with the pre-1st April 2015 law.
So the fund,
So-
if payment has been made refunded.
You see, now we've clarified that what applies post 1st April 2015 will also apply pre 1st April 2015. That's the recommendation of the Justice Shah panel.
One by one.
Well, I don't want to comment on it because there's a distinction between an FII and a foreign company per se. So therefore, I'd let that matter proceed on its own merits.
Sir, I'm Rajesh from WSJ. What is the message that the government is trying to transmit through this particular step will it actually imbibe confidence among investors?
No. You see, confidence amongst investors could be a consequence of this. But having certainty and clarity in the tax law, this is one of the essential functions of the government. And therefore, since an ambiguity had arisen on account of conflicting opinions, that ambiguity is required to be resolved. Now, contrary to the impression created that we were making a law applicable retrospectively, we didn't do that. It was a result of those conflicting opinions that this has happened. And therefore, there were only two ways of resolving it. Either the courts resolved it or the legislature resolves it. Now, considering the ground realities, we appointed an expert panel, and which, since it has given a report to the government, we decided to accept that report and enforce it. You see, it is now, in view of what the Justice Shah panel says, it is more clarificatory in nature, because they've taken a view that this was always the position.
So the amendment is required only in the Income Tax Act, or you need to amend the Finance Act also?
No, the Finance Act will amend the Income Tax Act.
Okay, so that amendment we expect in the winter session, sir?
It can come.
So how quickly can we expect the instructions to go out with the field information?
They will go immediately. They'll go immediately, maybe tomorrow itself.
Sir, by this, by accepting this report, what is the loss will occur to the exchequer?
Dekhiye, loss, if we go by the reasoning of Justice Shah panel, then they've taken a view that this was a tax not leviable. So,
पैनल में 3 मेंबर तो सारे मेंबर इस रिपोर्ट पर सब सहमति से
हाँ, दो ओरिजिनल रिपोर्ट और जो बाद में हमारे मन में कुछ प्रश्न उठे थे, जो हमने उनसे सामने रखे और उन्होंने उसका स्पष्टीकरण देकर कुछ पैराग्राफ्स उसमें ऑल्टर करके उसको स्पष्ट कर दिया कि एम्बिगुइटी ना रहे, तो यूनानिमस रिपोर्ट थी। और हम जो मॉडिफाइड रिपोर्ट है, क्योंकि वही रेलेवेंट है, तो इसलिए सार्वजनिक उसी को ही करेंगे। पहले वाला तो एक प्रकार से कंसल्टेशन डॉक्यूमेंट था। That's all right. There the normal procedures of the Act will apply. This is only with what I have told you is only with regard to FIIs and FPIs.
So the other category which is on, and I think we are going to give a plan 29, so that also deals with foreign codes. So will this stand of the government have any,
You see, today we have only taken a decision, and I have only accepted the report, because the report itself is only on FIIs, FPIs. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Well, that is the Finance Minister. Let's quickly bring in Pranay Sahita. Mr. Sahita, this was what we were speculating about, and the Finance Minister has made it clear there is a distinction between FII and FDI. Let the matter related to FDI, which is the Castleton matter, proceed as its own course. These recommendations that have been accepted are only with regards to FIIs and FPIs. Your first comments on what you've heard from the Finance Minister?
Yeah, so he's going strictly by the AP Shah report, which, and the mandate to the AP Shah committee was Justice AP Shah committee only in respect of FIIs, FPIs. My sense is the logic and rationale for FIIs, FPIs would equally apply to foreign direct investments, and so there will be a strong case for them as well. But you are absolutely correct. Unfortunately, the clarification that is going to be issued, which he said will be issued tomorrow, seems to be only for FIIs, FPIs, strictly as per the mandate to the Justice AP Shah committee. That's not the best of news, but I still think that, yeah.
Disappointed with what has just been articulated by the Finance Minister?
No, I won't say I'm disappointed. I'm really happy that they have come out with an unequivocal, categorical assertion to that effect. I would feel that the rest would follow in natural course now for any foreign company other than FII, FPI, who is not having a permanent establishment in India. The argument will be extremely, extremely strong anyways. And I would feel, therefore, that ideally it would have been great if he had clarified it for all foreign companies, but it's not that all is lost for other than FIIs, FPI.
Okay, quick comments in from each of our panelists. Nishit Desai, let me put that point to you. The Finance Minister has said that they will seek an amendment to the Income Tax Act Section 115 JB, but in the interim, pending the amendment, the government will issue a clarificatory circular. Sir, your first comments.
Well, I basically echo what I said. Only thing I would add that possibly they could have looked into issuing a clear circular. And, because circular can expand the scope of the section to benefit the taxpayer. And, he could have perhaps, in addition to whatever amendments would be introduced, perhaps, a clear circular would have helped. So to some extent, there is, little disappointment, but at the same time, I'm very happy that what has been indicated, at least in the right direction.
Right. Okay, let me bring Menka. And Menka, you've heard what the Finance Minister has had to say. We've been speculating about this for a while now, and finally it's official. Your first thoughts as well.
Well, Shireen, I think two things stood out for me. One that you haven't yet discussed with your guests, and it's speculative, but the Finance Minister said there was something in the initial report that led to objections or differences of view, after which the Finance Minister, the Revenue Secretary and the AP Shah committee members met again, and what he's talking about is now a revised final report. So I'd be very curious to know what those differences were. That's point number one, and I think that'll be really very important because it will have a wider impact on the issue of whether foreign companies ought to get the same relief as FPIs seem to have been granted now. And the second point, and I'm sure our guests will comment on it, though this is a done deal, the various demand notices that have been sent out to foreign portfolio investors, whether they're withdrawn or what the technicality will be, I think those are some questions I'd like to put to both, Nishit as well as Pranav, since they're online with us. Pranav, do you foresee any trouble there, or given this stated position of the government, that's just paperwork now?
I think so far as FIIs and FPIs are concerned, it's pretty much done deal. So far as foreign companies other than FIIs and FPIs are concerned, one will have to wait and see what exactly.
No, that I get. Pranav, what I'm asking is whether, this whole paperwork bit of withdrawing the demand notices, the clarificatory circular, do you think it's just paperwork, or do you think there too there could be some slips? That's the question I'm asking.
I'm pretty confident that there's unlikely to be any slips so far as that is concerned.
And did you, from the grapevine, pick up anything, Pranav, that could tell you what the difference of opinion could be, or why there was a need for a revised final report from the AP Shah committee that was submitted, in fact, on August 25th, so not so long ago?
Yeah, honestly, I have no clue whatsoever, Maneka, but if you have something, I'd be happy to know.
Well, I don't, because this is the first I've heard of it from the Finance Minister as he was speaking a short while ago. Mr. Desai, if I can put the same question to you, do you foresee any trouble in the paperwork, or at least as far as foreign portfolio investors are concerned, this is a done deal?
Yeah, it looks like done deal, but let's see how the whole, circular is issued. And, only when we look at that at the moment it gives us a lot of confidence.
Okay,
that it's a done deal. But only, lawyers can never opine finally unless they see papers.
All right, fair enough. Sandeep, I imagine this is good news for your clients?
It is. Most of them, not all of them. The FDI element is still, I think, because I don't see why which hat a foreign investor is wearing should make such a difference. But having said that, I think it's a great step forward.
Okay. I find it a little curious that we've spent the last a year and a half, almost a year and a half now, or at least a year, debating a situation that arose out of an advance ruling authority order that was specific to one foreign company, not even a foreign portfolio investor. So if we still have Sanjay Dutt with us, I'm going to put this question to him. Sanjay, while the tax position may be clarified as of now, and that is relief for foreign investors, do you really think the government handling of this situation, spells relief as well?
I think so, America. I think government is getting its act together on these issues. You must give them, some leeway in the sense that, for 6-8 months it takes to understand. And more than that, I think the issue is about the entire culture and the entire, everything percolating down to the officers who get sensitized to these kind of, issues. I think Now that started to happen, with regard to FIIs, foreign companies, etc. And I'm very positive. I think the issue that's been left right now, which obviously was not in the AP Shah mandate about foreign companies, that would also be addressed with time, maybe in the next finance bill. So the fact that, government took this problem head on and I think in a reasonably short time have come out with the, clarity on the FII and the FPI issue. So I'm quite positive. I think things would start getting resolved, and at least, you have a receptive government. You have a finance minister who's an excellent lawyer and a assistant and a minister of state with him who's been an excellent investor, who understands the investment community. So combination of the two, I think, between them, they'll be able to sort out a lot of, the mess that's been there for many years, the legacy issues that been handed down with. So I don't see any cause of worry or concern from people from taxation or regulatory point of view that most investors have been facing over a period of time.
These are tough markets to call, Sanjay. But this good news, do you think, might make India a little bit more attractive than it has been in the recent past, though it has been a standout emerging market?
These are, of course, issues which are added positive. At the end of the day, the fundamentals is what matters. We got to tackle issues that, once again, fall in the court of the finance minister and the Ministry of Finance with regard to, domestic policy issues relating to NPAs, relating to growth, all the other issues that they have to grapple with. I think they are totally in control of them. They're dealing with them, particularly with regard to the banking sector. I think those are more fundamental issues, and obviously some part of it RBI has to chip in also. I think if those are addressed, those are 80% of the problem. These kind of issues, are nagging issues, but the core issues have to be fundamentals that have to finally attract investments into the country.
The report of the committee is now being made public. Let me just read out very quickly. The press release has just come in from the government. Of course, this is a summary of what the finance minister has already finished briefing us on. And it says, through the amendment, and that was the amendment to the Income Tax Act that the finance minister had spoken of, the government proposes to clarify that MAT provisions will not be applicable to FIIs, FPIs, not having a place of business or permanent establishment in India for the period prior to 1/04/2015. Pending such an amendment, CBDT will convey to the field formations the decision of the government to accept the recommendations. I believe it's a 73-page report that has been put up by the finance ministry. This is, of course, the AP Shah report, and as we've been saying, this is a second version because after the CBDT officials, as the finance minister had pointed out, had raised questions of the reasoning of certain recommendations, the Shah panel has incorporated their response and put out a fresh report on the 25th of August, and that has now finally been made public. We are going to get you details of what that report says, but Minka, back to you for now.
Well, Shireen, I'm looking at the report, and it is, I think, 68 pages. So this is the one that the Finance Ministry has put up right now. I'm assuming this is the revised final report, as the Finance Minister just told us a short while ago. And it's really going to be tough for me to read this and speak at the same time. So I am unfortunately going to toss it back to some of our guests to give us some thoughts on how they expect the Castleton matter to proceed from here on. Because while the issue of foreign portfolio investors, or at least their problems with regards to MAT, may have been laid to rest today, the bigger issue of the MAT levy on foreign companies, that is direct investment, as you've been talking about, Shireen, that will now maybe finally be decided by Castleton, as the finance minister has laid out. Now, curiously, the government had agreed to an expedited hearing of Castleton, and then we had the government seek, in fact, more time. So the hearing that was supposed to take place in August got moved by more than a couple of weeks. I think it will now take place only in September or the month after. So I'd be interested in knowing what the government position on that will be, and how important that really will be for foreign direct investment. Pranav, are you hopeful that that case will win on the merits of the case, even if the government continues to insist on the levy of MAT?
I would think that case will win on the merits anyway. This Justice AP Shah committee report should, in fact, further strengthen the taxpayers' hands if that matter does go ahead on 29th September. In any case, the unfortunate part, if at all, in this evening's discussion has been that the government does not seem to have unequivocally stated that they will take a stand before the Supreme Court in terms of instructions they give to their counsel. not to press the matter or to concede or to agree with the taxpayers' position. That would have been certainly the final 1% fillip to the market, because while FIIs, FPIs always get this particular favored treatment, the fact that ease of doing business is improved also indirectly helps the capital markets and the country as a whole, which should be recognized. And therefore, such an instruction to the Council would go a long, long way in further bringing confidence in the Indian business environment. So I would still feel if that happens, that would be a great step indeed.
Right. We are still standing by now. We will be joined